What you're about to witness is a story that will challenge everything you think you know about international aid, political resistance, and the power of determination. This is the tale of Ibrahim Troy, a leader who faced impossible odds when the European Union slammed the door on his country's desperate plea for environmental aid. But instead of accepting defeat, he made a decision that would not only transform the landscape of Burkina Faso but also send shockwaves through the corridors of power in Brussels. 10 million trees. 10,000 soldiers. One man's refusal to bow down to foreign indifference. The envelope arrived like a death sentence wrapped in diplomatic courtesy, white paper, embossed letterhead, and words that would echo through the dusty corridors of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou for weeks to come. Ibrahim Troy held the letter in his weathered hands, reading the same paragraph 3 times, each reading making the rejection feel more insulting than the last. Due to budgetary constraints and regional instability, the European Green Investment Grant for Sahel reforestation will not be extended to Burkina Faso at this time. We encourage your administration to reapply in the 2026 fiscal cycle pending improved security conditions and governance metrics. The translation was crystal clear: not now, not you, not worth it. Outside his office window, the Harmattan winds were already beginning their seasonal assault on the capital. Dust devils danced across the barren landscape like ghostly reminders of what this land had lost. Once, this region had been green. Once, children had climbed baobab trees and families had gathered under canopies of leaves. Now, mothers walked 15 kilometers for water, farmers stared at cracked earth that refused to yield crops, and children drew pictures of trees they had never seen in real life. Troy set the letter down and walked to the window. The irony wasn't lost on him. Europe, the continent that had spent centuries extracting resources from Africa, was now too concerned about budgetary constraints to help restore what generations of exploitation had destroyed. They wanted stability but refused to invest in the very solutions that could create it. They demanded good governance while withholding the tools that could demonstrate it. His Minister of Environment, Dr. Aminata Kabor, knocked and entered without waiting for permission. She had been working on the reforestation proposal for 8 months, collaborating with European agricultural scientists, submitting soil samples, providing satellite imagery, and crafting detailed projections showing how strategic tree planting could restore rainfall patterns, prevent soil erosion, and create sustainable livelihoods for rural communities. Mr. President, she said, her voice tight with controlled frustration, I've just spoken with our liaison in Brussels. They suggested we focus on capacity building instead of ambitious environmental projects. They want us to attend workshops on forest management rather than actually plant forests. Troy turned from the window, and Dr. Kabor was struck by the expression on his face. It wasn't anger. It was something far more dangerous. It was determination crystallizing into action. Aminata, he said quietly. How many trees did our proposal call for? 10 million over 2 years, Mr. President. The EU grant would have covered seedlings, irrigation infrastructure, monitoring equipment, and training programs. And how much did they offer instead? Consultation fees for a preliminary study. Approximately €40,000. To determine if we're ready for tree planting. Troy was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a dust storm was building on the horizon, turning the afternoon sky the color of dried blood. Children were running for shelter, covering their faces with whatever cloth they could find. This was the daily reality his people endured while bureaucrats in climate-controlled offices decided their fate. Call an emergency cabinet meeting, he said finally. And summon General Adrago. Dr. Kabor hesitated. Mr. President, if you're thinking of requesting military funding for environmental projects, I should warn you that the finance minister will have serious concerns about budget allocation. I'm not requesting anything, Troy interrupted. I'm commanding it. The cabinet meeting that evening was unlike any in the nation's history. Round the mahogany table sat ministers of agriculture, defense, finance, education, and infrastructure. Maps of Burkina Faso covered the walls, marked with red zones indicating severe desertification and blue areas showing remaining forest cover. Precious little blue remained. General Adrago, a career military officer who had spent 30 years defending the nation's borders, looked confused as he studied the reforestation chart spread before him. Mr. President, I'm not certain why military leadership is required for an agricultural initiative. Troy stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding absolute attention. General, how many active duty soldiers do we currently have? Approximately 12,000, sir. And how would you describe their current state of readiness and morale? Excellent, Mr. President. Our forces are well trained, disciplined, and eager for meaningful deployment. Perfect. Troy placed his hands on the table and leaned forward. Gentlemen, ladies, we are about to launch the largest military operation in our nation's history. But this time, we're not fighting an enemy. We're fighting extinction. The finance minister, a cautious man named Musa, immediately raised concerns. Mr. President, reallocating military resources for environmental projects will require significant budget adjustments. The cost of seedlings, transportation, equipment. Musa, Troy interrupted, what did the European Union spend last month on agricultural subsidies for their own farmers? I believe the figure was approximately 2 billion euros, sir. And they couldn't spare 2 million for our reforestation project? Because of budgetary constraints? Troy's voice carried an edge of